I always say. If you asked 100 psych nurses to explain what their patients saw today that they did not see, you would get 100 different answers, from spiders to a rainbow to the floor moved. If you ask 100 hospice nurses the same question, they will all say that their patients saw deceased loved ones.
So something else that's a through line of the book, you speak to multiple patients in hospice who see deceased loved ones before they passed. I believe Miss Sue, who's one of the patients in the book, saw her husband and spoke about her husband saying, he's here to come get me. There's another woman in the book who I believe saw her daughter, or her was it her daughter that passed away a while ago?
I think that's the one. The first chapter.
Oh wait, sorry, my headphones just disconnected. One sec.
Oh, yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Check.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I'm gonna plug in my other headphones. It's weird. It says they have battery, but it's not picking up. So I'll be right back. So you were talking about. I couldn't hear what you said.
So the indices. So before we get, so there's the first chapter was her sister. Second, Carl was his daughter.
Okay.
Third chapter was husband. Fourth was no one. Yeah.
Yeah, that's like having people, a dying patient, see someone who's deceased. There's a lot of things that pop into my head as I'm reading it, and you address a lot of them in the book, like the hallucinations. Is it a spiritual experience? Is it a hallucination? Is it actually happening? What do you believe is going on when somebody sees a person who's already dead that is on the brink of death themselves?
Yeah, I hear hallucinations all the time, which I get it. This is what I always say. If you asked 100 psych nurses to explain what their patients saw today that they did not see, you would get 100 different answers, from spiders to a rainbow to the floor moved. If you ask 100 hospice nurses the same question, they will all say that their patients saw deceased loved ones. So that's a big difference there. And then our patients also have hallucinations. So whenever they are seeing these different things. It's not their loved ones, and they're usually scared whenever it happens. Whereas whenever they're seeing deceased loved ones, it is always right before they die. Even if there aren't other symptoms that they're going to die, sometimes people will just be like, I'm seeing my deceased loved one. And I'm like, oh, okay. All right. Maybe we're closer than I thought. And they're always very calm. It brings them peace. I do think it's their loved ones. That's just how I feel from being in these rooms. But I also feel like if you think it's just the brain doing something else, I think it's nice to know that the brain comforts you at the end. And I think that's helpful for people to know who fear death.
Yeah. Part of me is like, it almost doesn't matter what it is towards the end, because if I'm dying and I think my wife or my brother or my parents are there and it's a very peaceful experience, I don't need an explanation of why it's happening. Like it would be cool to know for the scientists that are studying it and putting people in MRIs, or just trying to see like what is actually going on in the brain. Is it a baseline chemical reaction? Is there something else unexplainable? Maybe there's something happening that we can't yet explain yet scientifically that we'll know 50, 100 years from now. But to the person that it's happening to, I could see it almost just not mattering. You're like, this is a very pleasant experience.
Yeah.
I don't want it to stop if it's coming. And it almost doesn't make a difference, like what the source is to that person.
Yeah, and I have patients who believe in nothing that see deceased loved ones, and they're still comforted by it. And change their ways. A lot of people will be like, oh, do they ask for the chaplain and they're seeking God and they want to, no, they still believe that, but they're
Yeah.
happy.
It's interesting that the patients are always calm, and you talk about that in the book too, like when they're seeing a deceased loved one, the calmness that comes over them, and it's like they're talking to someone in the room normally, and then you compare that to being on psychedelics. If you're on mushrooms or LSD, um, I can't speak to having hallucinations sober, luckily, because that's never happened to me. But I have had some experiences with psychedelics, and like calm is not the word I would use to describe it. If you're seeing, even if it's not a full on hallucination, which I've never had, even if it's more of just like colors changing or fractaling or things like that, like it can be calming, but I definitely have to get myself in a mindset that I'm not going to overreact to this. This is just like, this means that whatever I've taken is working. Like, I'm not just automatically calm from it. And I don't know what that means from a scientific standpoint, but it's just interesting. It stood out to me where I'm like, huh, like that should be taken into account, that these aren't wild, out of control hallucinations and behavior. It's something that is affecting the body in a very peaceful manner.
Yeah, it's different. And I think people try to use what knowledge we already have and apply it. And I'm not saying that they might not come out with new information, like you said, in 50 or 100 years that explains it, which if they do, they do. I'm open, to reading about it. But as it stands now,
Yeah.
we don't have explanations for these.